Okay, good evening, good night, everyone. Welcome to this journey of Last Avenue Journal Conference. We have a schedule for today, and we are going to have a meeting of around 1.5 or 1 or 2 hours, depending on how the activity develops. For the schedule today, we will have first a presentation of a video recorded by storytelling. We will have a storytelling video about El Loro Pelado. This is a story by Horacio Quiroga, narrated by Mirna Sánchez in Spanish. Later, we will move to the scientific presentations with Beatriz, Magno, Alves de Oliveira here in our room. Then we will have another presentation by myself, both in English. And finally, after a Q&A session or a short dialogue among participants or presenters, after that, we will have audiovisual material by Trapp. It's also a video with lyrics in German. So welcome everyone, it's our pleasure to be in this session today. We will start with the opening short story, El Loro Pelado by Horacio Quiroga.
Había una vez una banda de loros en el monte. Por las mañanas salían a comer choclos y por la tarde naranjas. Hacían un barullo cuando salían a comer y tenían un loro centinela que se posaba en lo alto de un árbol y avisaba si alguien venía. Los loros son muy dañinos porque para comer los choclos abren el choclo, comen solo unas pocas semillas y después con las lluvias ese choclo se pudre, no sirve más. Así que no son muy queridos, aunque más de un peón los busca para meterlos dentro de su guiso. Un día un peón estaba tirando tiros al cielo para espantarlos cuando le dio al loro centinela. El loro centinela cayó tendido en el piso. Los otros loros escaparon, pero el centinela quedó ahí. Cuando el peón lo vio, le dio lástima porque era un loro chiquito, pequeño. Así que lo agarró y se lo llevó a los chicos, a los hijos del patrón, porque no estaba muerto, estaba lastimado. Los chicos felices de cuidarlo. Sí, los chicos hasta lo bautizaron, lo llamaron Pedrito, le vendaron el ala que tenía lastimado y lo empezaron a cuidar. También le daban de comer las cosas que ellos comían. Y así el loro empezó a tomar té con leche, aunque lo que más le gustaba era el pan mojado en el té con leche. Y como estaba con los chicos, copiaba lo que ellos decían. A los pocos días ya estaba hablando y repitiendo: té con leche para el lorito, buen día Pedrito, la papa para el loro. Aunque los loros, como los chicos, lo primero que aprenden es a decir malas palabras. Cierto día se empezó a sentir mejor y hasta se empezó a curar. Y de a poco se fue curando, pero no quiso irse porque se sentía muy feliz ahí en la granja. Hasta empezó a volar, pero no se alejaba de la granja. Pero pasó que llovió durante 5 días. Cuando al fin salió el sol, ay, Pedrito estaba feliz. Salió y empezó a volar. Y tan contento estaba que empezó a volar cada vez más lejos, alejándose de la granja. En determinado momento se cruzó con el Paraná. Ahí tenía el Paraná de un lado y del otro lado el verde de los árboles y los sembrados después de días de lluvia. y tan feliz estaba que siguió volando y volando, alejándose sin darse cuenta de la granja. Cansado de volar, se detuvo en lo alto de un árbol a descansar y hacía lo que hacía siempre Pedrito, se puso a conversar. Ahí en lo alto del árbol estaba la papa para Pedrito, té con leche para Pedrito, rico el té con leche, buen día Pedrito. Y así conversaba, cuando de repente vio a los pies del árbol 2 faroles verdes. ¿Qué sería eso? Pedrito, inocente, sin miedo a nada, empezó a bajar rama por rama para ver qué eran esas luces que se veían desde el suelo. A medida que se fue acercando, descubrió que esas luces eran los ojos de un tigre que lo estaba mirando. Pedrito, sin miedo, inocente, rica la papa, rica la papa, ¡hola, tigre! El tigre al principio no le gustó que Pedrito le hablara así, que no le tuviera miedo, pero por otro lado también pensó, podría ser un rico bocadito para mí. Así que mientras Pedrito le hablaba, rica la papa, rica té con leche, el tigre le contestó, hola, lorito, hola, ¿cómo estás? Baja un poquito, así te veo mejor. Rica la papa, rico té con leche. Y Pedrito empezó a bajar rama por rama. Baja, lorito, porque no te escucho, soy sordo. Baja un poco más. Rica la papa, rica té con leche. Y Pedrito siguió bajando. Y de repente, cuando el tigre lo tenía a su alcance, pegó un salto, un zarrapazo, y lo alcanzó a rozar a Pedrito. Pedrito instintivamente pegó un salto y se fue a ramas más altas. Pero de repente, claro, el tigre no lo había matado, pero lo había agarrado por el lomo y lo había desplumado todo en el lomo, en la cola. Pedrito, muerto de dolor y de miedo, ¿cómo podía? Seguía luchando para saltar más alto, más alto, más alto en el árbol. Y allá llegó, pero no podía volar, porque le faltaban también las plumas de la cola. Así que como pudo, saltando, empezó a cruzar de árbol en árbol. Y así saltando de árbol en árbol, buscó volver a la granja. Cuando allá llegó, no quiso bajar, porque se veía tan feo, se había convertido en el loro más feo, un loro desplumado, un loro pelado. No quiso bajar, así que buscó un árbol ahí bien cerquita de la granja, un árbol que tenía así como un hueco, y se refugió ahí en lo alto del árbol, en el hueco. Los chicos salían a buscarlo y lo llamaban, Pedrito, ¿dónde estás? Vení, Pedrito. Pero Pedrito no bajaba, no quería que lo vieran así. Los chicos día tras día lo llamaban, pero Pedrito no venía. Entonces empezaron a pensar si Pedrito había muerto o si habría ido con otros loros. Y después ya dejaron de llamarlo. Los días pasaron. Pedrito se refugiaba en el árbol y bajaba todas las noches a la cocina. Cuando no había nadie, buscaba qué comer y volvía a subir a su árbol. Los días pasaron, y Pedrito de a poco fue recuperando las plumas. Ahí, cuando ya tuvo todo su plumaje, unas plumas nuevas de colores brillantes, se decidió a bajar. Y un día se apareció en el patio de la granja. Buen día, Pedrito, rica la papa para Pedrito. Los nenes, cuando lo vieron, felices estaban de que Pedrito hubiera vuelto. ¿Dónde estabas, Pedrito? ¿Dónde te metiste? Pero Pedrito no decía nada. El dueño de la granja Empezó a pensar, ¿qué le pasó a este loro? Que faltó por tantos días y ahora volvió con ese plumaje brillante. El día siguiente, Pedrito, como era de costumbre, se paró en el hombro del dueño de la granja. Y ahí el hombre le preguntó, ¿qué te pasó, Pedrito? ¿Dónde anduviste todo este tiempo? Pedrito le contó lo que le había pasado con el tigre, de lo que le había hecho y también que lo había pelado todo. Y por eso él no quiso bajar y se escondió en un árbol. El hombre le dijo, pobre Pedrito, lo que te pasó. Pero al mismo tiempo recordó que hace mucho él andaba buscando una piel de tigre para poner en el comedor como alfombra al lado de la estufa. Así que le dijo, Pedrito, vamos a cazar ese tigre. Entre los dos lo vamos a cazar. Vamos a ir ahí, a ese mismo lugar, a ese árbol donde lo encontraste. Y ahí vos te vas a subir en lo alto del árbol y lo vas a empezar a llamar. Y yo, escondido detrás de otros árboles, voy a estar con la escopeta. Y cuando él se acerque, lo voy a matar. Pedrito, contento por querer vengarse del tigre, aceptó la propuesta. Allá partieron el dueño de la granja, Pedrito, en la camioneta y con un rifle. Pedrito se subió en lo alto del árbol donde se había encontrado con el tigre. El hombre se escondió detrás de unos árboles con la escopeta y allá arriba, en el árbol, Pedrito empezó. Buen día, Pedrito, rica la papa, rica té con leche, rico, qué lindo, qué rico todo para Pedrito. Buen día, Pedrito. Conversó, hasta que de repente miró al pie del árbol y ahí vio que estaba de vuelta esos dos faroles verdes. Con miedo y con bastante precaución empezó a bajar, despacito en el árbol, despacito. Así vio que estaba el tigre, otra vez en los pies del árbol. Hola, lorito, volviste. Vení, baja un poquito, vení, así hablamos. Pedrito, muerto de miedo, pero rica la papa, rica el té con leche, está acá al pie del árbol. Lorito, ¿con quién hablas? Baja un poquito más. ¿Te acordás? Soy sordo y no te escucho. Baja un poquito más. Pedrito bajaba, pero con miedo, igualmente con precaución. Bajaba y... Estoy bajando. Rico té con leche, rica la papa. ¡Está cerca! Lorito, ¿seguís hablando? Baja un poco más. Baja, lorito. Y Pedrito, desesperado porque el dueño no lo atacaba al tigre y él seguía bajando, pero con valor. Bajó unas ramas más. Rico té con leche, rica la papa. Está muy cerca. Va a saltar. Y en eso el tigre pegó un salto con sus garras hacia arriba, tratando de agarrar a Pedrito, y en ese momento un escopetazo da sobre la cabeza del tigre y el tigre cae tendido a los pies del árbol. Pedrito saltaba de alegría porque habían matado a ese tigre. Así volvieron el dueño de la granja, Pedrito y el tigre muerto en la camioneta a la granja. A los pocos días, el tigre se había convertido en una gran alfombra extendida en el comedor al lado de la estufa. Pedrito no se olvidaba de lo que le había hecho al tigre, así que se paseaba ahí por el borde de la alfombra cantando, rica la papa, rico té con leche, el tigre quiere té con leche. A las risas, y sí, Todos en la granja se morían de risa de lo que hacía Pedrito. Y Pedrito también. Bueno, este cuento se llama El loro pelado. Forma parte de los cuentos de la selva de Horacio Quiroga. Mi nombre es Mirna Sánchez.
Okay, after this first presentation, which is a short story by Mirna Sánchez, narrated by Mirna Sánchez, but the short story is written by Horacio Quiroga. El loro pelado, translated as the bald parrot, because our conference has to do with nature as well. I forgot to mention this. After this artistic presentation, I was saying, we are going to move now to the scientific presentations in our conference, Comparative Literature, Arts, and Nature. And now we are going to receive Beatriz Magno Alves de Oliveira. Beatriz has a bachelor degree in scenic and costume design from the Federal University of the State of Rio de Janeiro. She also has a master in performing arts from the graduate program in performing arts, PPGAC Uni Rio, and she is a PhD student in Cotroneo in scenic arts at PPGAC Uni Rio and theater studies at LMU Munich, Germany. Her presentation is entitled Repercussions of Wagnerian Ideas in the Modernist Theater Project of the Münchner Künstlertheater. So Beatriz, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vanessa, for the presentation. I will show my screen. Can you see the yeah?
Yes,
okay.
Perfect.
So good evening. My name is Beatriz. As Vanessa said, I'm a PhD student in performing arts at Unirio in Rio de Janeiro and in theater studies at the University of Munich. And this presentation is a small part of what I have been researching in my doctorate, my PhD. So to start the discussion, I will quickly explain my research general objective and then focus on the presentation theme. And just a second. Yeah. My doctoral research consists of 3 case studies on creating 3 theatrical architectures in Germany in the early 20th century. My goal is to think about how these architectural experiments dealt with the concept of Gesamtkunstwerk thrown up by the composer Richard Wagner in the mid-19th century. I am also interested in understanding how the relationship between the artistic directors and the architects who designed the theater came about. These case studies are the Münchner Künstlertheater, conceived by the playwright and theorist Georg Fuchs and designed by the architect Max Littmann. The Großes Schauspielhaus Berlin, developed by the well-known director Max Reinhardt and designed by the architect Franz Bose. And finally, the Total Theater, designed by Walter Gropius for the Erwin Piscator Productions. I would also like to add that none of those theaters exist physically anymore. The Künstlertheater was destroyed during the conflicts of the World War II, and the Großes Schauspielhaus was demolished in the 80s due to structural compromise in the building, and the total theater was never built. It's just a project. Therefore, all research is based on writings by the artists themselves, and secondary source and materials from German historical archives. As I brought up in the title of the presentation, I will specifically deal with the construction of the Künstlertheater in Munich. This theater was also the subject of my master thesis, and I am currently in the research phase in which I revisit my thesis and add new information that I could find here in Munich in the historical archives. So this presentation is more about the Munich Künstlertheater, is the second chapter of my thesis. When I was an undergraduate student, I was interested in researching symbolist scenography. At the time, I found some reference to Fuchs' proposals, but no literature in Portuguese that would deepen his ideas. For this reason, I researched this theater during my master, and now in my doctorate, this subject also appears as one of the chapters of the thesis. As I said before, the Artists' Theater of Munich is the English translation of Künstlertheater, was based on Fuchs' proposals for a new theater for the new century. He wrote about these proposals in a book entitled Die Schaubühne der Zukunft, the stage of the future, in 1905. And at the time, the architect Max Littmann was already working with Fuchs and did the illustrations for this book. The architect Max Littmann was one of the architects responsible for the modernization of the city of Munich during the regency period of Prince Luitpold von Bayern. Among his most famous buildings are the Hofbräuhaus am Platz and the Kaufhaus Oberpollinger, located both in the city center of Munich. Among the theaters are the Prinzregent Theater and the Münchner Kammerspiele and the Münchner Künstlertheater. Also did some projects for other theater buildings outside Munich, in other cities of Germany. In Littmann's writings, archived at the Deutsches Theatermuseum, also based in Munich, we can understand that the architect studied Wagner's ensembles designs for the Münchner Festspielhaus. This was the first project that later will become the Bayreuther Festspielhaus. And yeah, in his proposals for a new theater, Fuchs characterized the naturalistic theater and sought a stylized theater that would be able to bring the theater a dimensional of ritual. The phrase retheatralized the theater opens his book, The Revolution des Theaters, and this book is about the construction of the artists' theater, the Künstlertheater. It was wrote 1 year after the first premiere on the artist theater. For this, he takes up some Wagnerian ideas, mainly about the theater as a meeting point and creating a community. As we will see below, the architectural structure of the artist theater itself brings some elements of the Bayreuth Festspielhaus. I should also point out that the architect Littmann He studied in details all the theatrical designs of Wagner, and he was very inspired by their ideas in several of his theatrical constructions. That's also interesting to see in the Prinzregen Theater. Another important point of this theatrical creation is its relationship with the plastic arts. Several artists who collaborated with the theater were also part of the Jugendstil movement, a movement that criticized the historicism and the Academy of Fine Arts. Instead, the movement sought to bring art into our everyday life's element and create spaces in which architecture, furniture, and objects are in aesthetic harmony. In other words, some ideas gave rise to modern design. In the image, we can see the facade of the in Jugendstil style. This is the Münchner Künstlertheater. Now is this reference led Fuchs and Littmann to create a new stage for the artist theater called the Reliefbühne, or relief stage. The idea of relief comes from the sculptor Adolf von Hildebrandt's discussions about bas relief in sculpture. Fuchs tries to transpose to the theater some of Hildebrandt's statements in his book The Problem of Form in Painting and Sculpture. In this book, Hildebrandt discusses his understanding of the functioning of human vision and defends the idea of bas relief as an artistic language that best matches with the mechanism of the human eye. For Hildebrandt, each human eye generates only two-dimensional images, and our perception of 3D depends of the difference in light and shadow, scale, and association of these two images. In other words, he understands that the human vision works like a stereogram. That's in the build here. A common object in optics that combines two-dimensional pictures and creates the illusion of 3D. In this image, we can see the stereoscope. From this understanding of vision, Hildebrandt argues that bas relief can contain the completeness of the work in a single angle of viewing, as in painting, and at the same time provide a real 3D dimensionality to the eye and not an illusory one as in painting. This is the idea that Fuchs will seek to adapt to the theater using the relief stage. In this picture, we can see a bas relief from Hildebrandt. And in this other building, in this other picture, we can compare to the before, and this is a scenic design painted by Fritz Ehler to the Faust play, the first presentation at the Münchner Künstlertheater. In the drawing, we can see the idea of opposition between the scenery and the actors in relief in front of the background. Now, I will talk a little more about the structure of the relief stage. To begin this discussion, I'd like to first present the design of the Bayreuth Festspielhaus. this one in the left, and compare it with a common opera house of the time, this other one. One of the main differences is with regard to the configuration of the audience. In the opera houses, the U-shape audience allow the spectators to see each other, as well as having the audience divided according to social classes. In Wagner's theater, the audience is unified and all the seats are directed toward the stage. The orchestra pit completely covers the musicians, so that their movements don't distract the audience from the scene here. And this is the ground floor of the Künstler Theater. The audience is frontal in the form of an amphitheater, just as in Bayreuth. The stage, unlike in Bayreuth, is not very deep. The idea was to have a wider stage rather than a deep one, so that the actors are close to the audience. For Fuchs, the proscenium region is the most crucial area of the stage because it's the limit between the scene and the audience. The theater has an orchestra pit that can be used or not during the performances. This pit has a mechanism that makes it possible to close it and use it as a performance area. At the back of the stage, we can see a cyclorama and a mechanism of changing this cyclorama in this area here. With these two images, we can compare the visibility of the audience in the Bayreuth Festspielhaus and in the opera houses, just to see the difference of the visibility of the audience. In the cross-section of Bayreuth and the Künstler Theater, this is Bayreuth, and this is the Künstler Theater. We can see that the audience does not have a difference in social layers, as in the court theater. There are no boxes or galleries. The idea is that the whole audience can have an equal view of the stage. Besides the orchestra pit, we can see at the back of the stage, in this area, a pit for the cyclorama and the spotlights here. The idea is to create an infinite background with a painting without perspective and without an illusion of deep. Therefore, the background of the scenery, as well as the background of the relief, should help highlight the actor and not the other way around. The idea is that the background can be transformed by changing in the incidence of light, an effect that could only be brought to the theater through the technological advance of electric light. In addition, experiments using light and paintings have been going on since the 19th century with the invention of the dioramas and the panoramas. In Littmann's drawings, located in the archive of the Deutsches Theatermuseum in Munich, we can find numerous studios of light reflection and development of the theater. I apologize for not very good photos. I shot them in the museum deposit with my old cell phone camera. So this dotted line we can see the marking of the reflector pit in this area here. And this is the cyclorama in the background. And here, here is the proscenium of the stage, and the public is above here. Here we can better look at the orchestra fit and the reflectors and the mechanism of the stage specific for stage specific lighting from above. In his book on the theater, Fuchs states that the theater had a modern stage light of different colors here. And here are the others, reflector and here the orchestra pit. And finally, I would like to show the details of the orchestra pit with the covering mechanism. In the first drawing, we can see the orchestra being used here. I don't know if you can see, but it's a maestro here. And in the second draw, it is covered, and you can use this area to the performance. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and understood my English well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Beatriz. It was wonderful and it was very, very clear. So now we will move to the next scientific presentation. And later we will have a moment of Q&A session or discussion session. I will also share my screen, and the presentation now is called European Migration and National Theater in Argentina between 1850 and 1918, Technologies of Travel Towards the Promised Land. I am Vanesa Cotroneo, and I studied literature and arts, later a master in cultural studies and Latin American European studies, and now I am a PhD student in theater studies, also at the LMU in Munich. I will share my screen. For the PowerPoint. So I guess you can see it now. Yes, this presentation is part of my research at the Ludwig Maximilians University, Munich, Germany. There I have started a PhD in theater studies within the ERC project Immigrants during this year, which means that I am at the beginning of my research. So be patient with that. I'm moving the slides. It's possible to see that, I guess. If not, sorry, I had a problem with the slides, but I will go back, not to the full presentation, because sometimes I have some problems with moving the slides in the full presentation. So this paper, as we have here, the overview, focuses on the transatlantic process of mass migration, and particularly on the involvement of theater professionals who emigrated from Europe. The United States of America, as you know, was one of the main destinations for European migrants to the Americas during the 19th century. The other important destination was the area of my research, namely Argentina. In this sense, I focus on European theater migrants who came to Argentina between 1850 and 1918, and who were able to create theater business and theater networks among both international and local people. In this paper, I will concentrate on two of them, namely Pablo Raffetto and Frank Brown. In this context, the following questions guide my research. What kind of myth was built on the idea of migrating to America, or hacer la América, making the America? Which were the technological conditions for those trips? Considered that, and I quote, you will find the quote also on the slide, most newcomers had abandoned Europe in the hopes of hacer la América, making their fortune in America, and they were willing to perform tasks and undertake hardships alien to the Argentine elite and considered menial by rural criollos, end of quote. It is worth to ask why Raffetto and Brown decided to migrate to Argentina, which will be clarified soon. And finally, to what extent this myth was a political construction and what role played theater migrants in unveiling it. My hypothesis affirms that whereas national policy in Argentina was nominally inclusive towards the progress in transport and communication technologies, mass migration from poor European countries destabilized the initial plans, creating a gap between policy and practice. Thus, a way to narrow the gap was created by theatrical practices, among other ones, that contributed to the development of a systematized national theater and its industry. So for my research, I also have a methodology by searching or retrieving archives, official state documents, laws, and regulations. Especially important for this research is to consider theater migration as an intangible way of doing history and to re-elaborate the myth of the promised land by embodied migrant trajectories and biographies of those who struggled between the myth and reality. The myth of the promised land was a legal and political construction to attract European population for newly independent countries, which during the 19th century were living processes of nation building. Mostly known with the example of the United States of America, as we mentioned, the Canadian geography scholars Richard Harris and Chris Hamnett explained the myth of America as the promised land. They state, and I quote, "Over the years, the idea of America as the promised land has acquired the status of myth, exerting a powerful influence on immigrants and scholars alike. People have come to the continent looking for a higher standard for living and a measure for economic independence. Observing this, scholars have stressed the prosperity of the new world in comparison with the old. They have argued that in the 19th century, cheap agricultural land attracted migrants. By the turn of the century, however, the concentration of industry, banking, and commerce was leaving fewer opportunities for small-scale urban enterprises. At the same time, the infrastructures of traffic and media enabled trade and exchange in the society of the time. The mediascapes, as the German theater scholar Nick Leonhardt highlights, connected the advances on technologies and media with the circumstances that allowed the productive interchange and crossings between continents. Theaterscapes, as Leonhardt says, are dimensions of cultural and global flows recognizable by looking on transport, technology, and media. The combination of building ships, railway lines, telegraphs, and roads, while developing markets for European industries in the colonies, contributed to the interconnectedness during the 19th century. Exactly this interconnectedness opened trade routes, including for theater circuits, and influenced emigration waves to the New World. That's an interesting aspect of the progress in technology and the progress in the circuits of theater industry. But what happened in Argentina? Here are the quotes about the technologies of travel that I just mentioned. In the case of the leading members of the Argentinian government, the comparisons between Europe and a new nation like Argentina following the example of the United States, were strategies to carry out progress. For the intellectual and later Argentinian president, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, the sentence "to know is to compare" was crucial, which means that the experience of knowing other regions and continents might increase the knowledge in one's own territory. Moreover, the author refers in his publication Facundo, Civilización y Barbarie, that the great disadvantage of the South American country is the desert, thus agreeing with Juan Bautista Alberti's idea that to governate is to populate. Alberti wrote the book Bases y Puntos de Partida para la Organización Política de la República Argentina, where he points out strategies for the political organization of the country, and one of the crucial factors was the migration from Europe. It can therefore be stated that European migration was an official policy of the countries of the Americas, particularly of Argentina. In this context, it is necessary to consider official state documents such as laws and regulations. The Argentinian Law of Immigration and Colonization of 1876, also called Nicolás Avellaneda Law after the president's name, for instance, states that every free person with the wish to enter and work in Argentina had the permission to do it. In particular, it highlighted the importance of requiring some professions, such as laborers, craftsmen, farmers, and professors, younger than 60 years old, who could guarantee morality and aptitude, and who traveled in a steamboat and having paid a second or third class ticket, or who was invited by the nation, the provinces, or the particular enterprises. Among those migrants were also theater artists that the Team Migrants Project calls theater migrants. According to the theater scholar Berenika Szymanski-Dul, and I quote, among the many migrants who left for new and foreign countries and continents were numerous theater professionals, including actors, dancers, singers, artists, but also theater managers. In the following, they are referred to as theater migrants. End of quotation. One of these migrants was the Italian-born Pablo Raffetto, who wrote an important chapter in the Argentinian theater history, not only by creating his own performances and shows, and thus contributing to the Argentinian theater industry, but also by building new theater spaces which shaped the urban plan of an emerging cultural capital city as Buenos Aires and its Argentinian national history. A brief mention to his arrival in Argentina shows a difference between theater migrants who already had knowledge and expertise and average labor migrants of that time. Raffetto left the Genoa harbor with his wife, Mrs. Luisa Raffetto, in 1869 and reached Buenos Aires by ship by the end of the same year. This way of mobility, this kind of ship crossing the sea, was the usual way to enter Argentina from Europe. But after his arrival, Raffetto did not stay at the Hotel de Inmigrantes, as most migrants in that period used to do, according to the established policy of reception. Instead, Raffetto decided to stay at the Hotel Marítimo, for which he had to pay extra. This lets assume that Raffetto arrived in Argentina directly to settle as a businessman. About his departure from Genoa, Raffetto would mention his thoughts to a journalist many years later, when he was aged 63. According to the artist's testimony, he said, and I quote, "By Genoa, who knows if I would ever see you again," end of quote. And he didn't. So this is the first migrant, and the second one is Frank Brown. So even when this transatlantic route by ship was very common for theater migrants arriving to Argentina from Italy and Spain, also an alternative case has been found. Frank Brown, here we have him, the English clown, who made impressive contributions to the local South American theater, accessed to Argentina by land. Thus, according to the information available in the Centro de Estudios Migratorios Latinoamericanos database, and according to experts in the field as the director of the Museo de la Inmigración Argentina, Mr. Sergio San Pedro, Frank Brown's migration information is not easily identifiable or even recorded, as it is the information of the European migrants who settled in Argentina after arriving by ship. The way in which Frank Brown entered in Argentina after a long 8 years tour through the Americas allows to observe that he may not have had the same reason as other migrants willing to make the America, as we said, but a personal decision of staying in a city that offered him new opportunities for his art, new networks, and an increasing developing theater industry, which Raffetto was already contributing to establish. In fact, Raffetto hired Brown and Podesta family, among others. The reasons why they left their original countries are still being retrieved. For what I am in contact with different archives in Genoa and also in Great Britain, in Brighton, the original city of Frank Brown. More results will be presented in the future. As migrants who left their native countries and settled in a new one, both Raffetto and Brown carry a dual identity that identifies them both with their origin and their destination. They migrated to the same reception country, Argentina, but they emigrated from different ones. As I said, Raffetto from Italy and Brown from England. In a comparative perspective, some differences arise when considering that the Argentinian government was expecting migrants from Great Britain and the North European countries for working in the railway industry, reason that explains why the image of both migrants differs. Even when Pablo Raffetto was a businessman who hired Frank Brown in his Politeama Argentino, together with the Podesta family, the intellectual elite of Buenos Aires celebrated Frank Brown's presentations with reviews, financial support, and laudatory comments, whereas Raffetto had to double the effort, and he was recognized by the Creole intellectual elite starting the 20th century. This is what I call struggles for legitimation. As Anna Cara Walker points out, and I quote, Argentine intellectuals unabashedly expressed disappointment in the types and classes of newcomers, most of whom were not the Nordic race. Throngs of Italians whose low cultural level Sarmiento judged not appreciable improvement over the backward native Spanish and Mestizo population occupied the land. Indeed, Argentina had become temporarily Europeanized, but without benefit of elite notions of civilization. End of quote. In this slide, or on this slide, you can see two images from the archive. On the left side, Pablo Raffetto, on the right side, Frank Brown. In the case of Frank Brown, a review by the already mentioned former Argentinian president Sarmiento, published in the Argentinian newspaper El Censor on 24th July 1886, describes the clown as the most spiritual and sympathetic that can be found. About his abilities as an acrobat, the intellectual said, and I quote, "The laws of gravity are completely indifferent to him. He climbs like a fly the highest pole. He would walk on a ceiling if he wanted. And if he doesn't fly, it's pure coquetry." End of quote. Sarmiento also describes Brown's physiognomy. I quote, "It is impossible to see more elegant muscles, a more athletic neck, a stronger and lighter structure, all crowned with a beautiful head that he knows how to give a bizarre appearance capable of making people with a grimace, end of quote. So there is also a kind of race element in this comment. Frank Brown was also admired by the Latin American poet Rubén Darío, a referent for Nicaragua, who integrated a modernist circle of poets and wrote a poem for the clown. Besides artistic friendships, Brown enjoyed the camaraderie of other political figures, such as Carlos Pellegrini and Leandro N. Alem, whose radical party financed the Coliseo Frank Brown, finally called Coliseo Argentino. For these political connections, a circus tent managed by Frank Brown was attacked with fire by oligarchic groups. In the case of Raffetto, the most serious reviews and scientific comments were written post-mortem as a recognition to his formidable work during the consolidation of a national scene in Buenos Aires. For example, the book by Podestá, Medio siglo de farándula, or books by professors Castagnino and Pelletieri. Raffetto was a popular artist, an indefatigable theater worker, beloved by his audience who saw his performances and later attended to his promoted shows when he invited international or national figures. An artist who, in his struggle for legitimation, had appropriated an Argentinian style, wearing a poncho as a gaucho and speaking with colloquial Argentinian expressions, as when he decided to suspend a show in his circus tent because, and I quote, "se viene una tormenta de la gran siete," end of quote, meaning that a terrifying storm was approaching. Those are elements of the cocoliche character and of a performative way for immigrants, especially Italians, to integrate into the Argentinian society. And now we will move to the conclusions and the main ideas that consist in saying that we have seen actually two theater migrants who came to Argentina during the 19th century in order to be part of the local culture. Technologies of travel defied nature and contributed to the interconnectedness and to theater industries. As the myth of the promised land fall when the integration of the newcomers was more complex than expected, and the official authorities expressed disappointment for the received immigration, theater professionals found a way to perform intercultural dialogue and cooperation, which led to a new Argentinian cultural identity. The two examples of Pablo Raffetto and Frank Brown exhibit how they were considered by Argentinian elite and popular culture, and thus how European migration kept holding the question on Argentinian identity during those and the following years. So thank you very much. You might see the bibliography, and I will stop sharing my screen. Right. May I ask, Beatriz, would you prefer that we make the Q&A session now, or would you prefer that we watch the video, the audiovisual material, and then we move to the brief discussion?
Yeah, maybe we can watch and then discuss.
Great. So now we are going to watch a video by Ben Trapp. He is a German musician, and he prepared especially for this session a video with images recorded in the forest. The music is also by Ben Trapp, and he included the lyrics of a poem by Rilke, Der Herbst. I share my screen. Der Herbst is written here below the video, so whenever you want to go to his account, you will find the lyrics by Rainer Maria Rilke, a poem written in September 1902, and then you have a translation to English. But now we are going to watch the video with music and lyrics by Ben Trapp.
herunterfallen, fallen wie von weit, als Welten in den Himmeln ferne Gärten. Sie fallen mit verneinender Gebärde, und in den Nächten fällt die schwere Erde aus allen Sternen in die Einsamkeit. Alle fallen, diese Hand da fällt und sieh die andere an, es ist in allem. Und doch ist einer, welcher dieses Fallen unendlich sanft in seinen Händen hält.
Well, it was very precise to have these images of nature in order to probably close this journey of our conference of Last Avenue Journal on comparative literature, arts, and nature. We might make the Q&A session private, so we probably discuss our ideas, but we record until here. Thank you very much, Beatriz, for being in this conference today. Thanks to Mirna Sánchez and to Trapp for their contributions as well. And thanks to our audience for watching us.